Welcome to our Gemara Shir. We are towards the end of Maseches Shabbos, and the daf is Kuf Nun Gimel Amud Beis. And today's topic is going to be mechamer, the prohibition of mechamer. Mechamer is one of the two prohibitions that have to do with your animals on Shabbos. And before we continue, of course, I'll remind you again that this shir is for the Ilun Neshama of my father, Menachem ben Akiva, and for the quick release of the hostages and everything else the Klal Yisrael needs. Welcome, Akiva. So basically, there are two separate isurim that have to do with your animal working on Shabbos or working with an animal on Shabbos, and those appear in two different places in the Torah. Look at that little chart I prepared for you, everybody here. Basically, we have one issur called Shvitzas Behemtoi, the other one is called Mechamer. Yeah? Shvitzas Behemtoi is a mitzvah saseh. It's a mitzvah to make sure your animal does not work on Shabbos, whether you're involved or you're not involved. It has nothing to do with your involvement. Even if your animal goes out to the street with a burden on it, nobody asked you to do it. In other words, the animal has some extra blanket, things that are unnecessary for the animal, and it's carrying it on its back from the house to the street or vice versa. That's a problem. Why? Because it says in Parshas Kisisa, "B'yom Shviti Shbos Laman Yanuach Shocha V'Chamerecha." Laman Yanuach is a mitzvah saseh. The Rishonim, the Kiva Eger, they say that it's a mitzvah saseh of the animal should rest. It's not a prohibition, it's a laman yanuach. And it applies to your animal. You're not allowed to, let's say, rent your animal to a goy, or it can be a big problem. That's in Avodah Zarah. I know the Olim is now doing Daf Yomi, although I'm not one of them. Yeah, in Daf Tes Vav Tes Zayin Tes Vav, it says there your animal cannot work even if it's by the hands of a goy. Your animal should not be working on Shabbos. That prohibition is not discussed in our parak. Yeah, it's just important to know what we're talking about. In our parak, we're talking about the prohibition of mechamer. Mechamer means you and the animal working together. If you and your animal or someone else's animal, mechamer is you are not allowed to work to plow together with the animal. Even if you're not touching the plow, you are leading the animal with your noise, with your voice, with your gestures. The animal that's working, and you are leading the animal in its work, or you are leading the animal as it's walking with a burden in Rosh Hashanah, then you have a problem of mechamer, and that's an isur Torah. In a way that's worse because it's a lav. What does it say? It says it in Aseret Dibros. Kol malacha atov v'chule v'chule v'shocha v'chamacha v'chol be'emtecha. You and the animal are not allowed to work together, which means, yeah, and that also applies to your animal with someone else's animal. For example, and here we're getting to our parak over here. How did we get to this issue of working with an animal in our parak? Because in our Mishnah we spoke about a person who's stuck Friday afternoon, and he is unable to continue walking with the pouch, with the wallet, with the money, with the diamonds that he has, because it's Shabbos is getting near. So what should he do? One solution was to place it on an animal and lead the animal, making sure the animal goes the right way together with the person, while the animal is carrying the stuff of the person. Okay? So that's called mechamer. We said that it's a problem, and yesterday we explained that even if it's Friday afternoon and on Shabbos the animal will work for you, with you, it's a problem, and you have to do it in such a way that the animal is not doing akira and hanocha. That was yesterday's discussion. Today we're discussing the actual prohibition of mechamer. We are going to learn how severe is mechamer. We are in the fifth line from the fifth wide line. The fifth wide line, yeah? Okay. Amami Barchama. A mechamer acher bento b'Shabbos. A person who is mechamer, who's working with his animal on Shabbos, not that he's doing the malacha, but he's leading the animal, and the animal is doing the malacha, him and the animal, Adamu behema toshia Hashem. Adamu behema doing malacha together. Says Rami Barcha, b'shogeg chayv chatos, b'mezid chayv skila. Whoa. Just like the 39 malachas, this too is, if you do it b'shogeg, you have to bring chatos. Let's say you forgot it's Shabbos, you have to bring korban chatos. And b'mezid, you did it on purpose, and there were edim and asra, the whole shebang, you did it on purpose and knowingly, and people saw you and warned you. Chayv skila, meaning it has the same severity, the same level of chumrah like any other malacha. When I say any other malacha, by the way, it's also a question if that's how mechamer is defined. The Ramban says that mechamer is either another malacha or mechamer is another form of doing any other malacha, which means just like you can't plow yourself, you can't plow with the animal. You can't carry yourself, you can't carry with the animal. It's not a different malacha, it's a different way of doing the malachas. In any event, Am B'chama is the hardliner. He says that the same level of chumrah and oinshin and punishments that apply to regular melacha when you do it on your own, the same applies if you do it to the animal. My timer, why is that? I mean, it's only the animal. I'm not doing anything myself. Hands off. It's me just, talking to the animal, telling it what to do. Why is it so severe? Amarove, or some say Rabba, you know why? The Pasuk says, Lo itase kol melacha. The Pasuk from Aser Sedibros and Parshas V'eschanon says, Lo itase kol melacha. Ata ubhemtecha, you, v'chule v'chule, and your animal. We see here a hekesh, a juxtaposition between him, the person, and the animal. What does it come to tell us? Behem to do mididei. Behema is the way they work with the animal has a similarity to you working on your own without an animal. Meaning, mahu b'shogeg chayv chatos and b'mezid chayv skila. Just like if you yourself, you chayv chatos, if you do it by mistake, you have to bring korban chatos. And if you're doing it b'mezid, you do it knowingly in your face, you chayv skila. Av be'em toinami, b'shog chayv chatos, b'mezid chayv skila. Be'ema is the same. He's taking the hekesh all the way, Rabbi Bar Chama, and he says it's the same level, same severity. It's mukash. Him and the animal, person and animal, are the same level of chiyuv. And therefore, if the person is using the animal for malacha, then he cannot. That's it's mamish severe. It's chayv skila ad kedei kach. Amar Rove says Rove, shtei tshuvas b'dovo. I have two ways to answer you, meaning two ways to refute what you just said. Rava has two reasons to disagree with Rami Bar Chama and not take mechamer all the way, not to take mechamer, on a field trip. Not to say mechamer is as severe as a regular melacha. Mechamer is also doraisa. Mechamer is also doraisa, lefi mainstream Rishonim, but it's not as severe as doing the malacha myself. Meaning, if the animal is walking down the street with my diamonds bags on it, and I'm supervising and go, hey, Bessie, telling the animal what to do, it's also, but it is not as severe as me carrying the bag with diamonds. And there are two reasons for that. Chada, one reason. Dichtiv. Oh, now we're getting to the nitty-gritty of how do we know the source of the Einshin of Melechet Shabbos. We have a chart for that too, but let's first read the pasuk. What does it say in the pasuk? At the end of Parshas Shlach, the end of Parshas Shlach, before Tzitzis, towards the end, it talks there about the korban that you have to bring if you're Oved of the Zorah. Let's say a person was Chalil Oved of the Zorah, b'shoigeg, then he has to bring a korban. And what does it say there? It says, which korban? Chatas. Just instead of a keves, kivsa, bring a seira. We have to bring korban chatas if you worshipped of the Zorah, b'shogeg. And what does it say over there? It says, Torah achas yelochem. You'll have one Torah, meaning you'll have one general rule that applies to everything. L'oisa bishgogo. In other words, any person who's acting bishgogo has the same isser and the same chiyuv as a person worshipping of a Zorah. What does it mean? And the pasuk continues, "Vanefesh hashatasa bi'ad Roma," which means it says over there that the person who is working, who's worshipping Oved of the Zorah, b'mezid is chayv kores, b'shoigeg is chayv chatos, And then it says, Torah achas yelochem. What does it mean? Huksha kol Torah kula avodah zarah. The whole Torah is like avodah zarah. Meaning, before we continue, and that's a famous rule. If a person, if we know that there's a Isser Kores, a Chiyuv Kores in any area in Halacha, such as Shabbos, eating Chometz, Ashes Ish, whatever, yeah, any chorus bemazid, it's a formula, it's a rule, it's a law, it's a regular formula, pattern, that if it's bemazid, chayev, chorus, b'shagig chayev chatos. And the father of all evils, the father of all this formula is Avodah Zarah. And in Avodah Zarah it's embedded and it says, Torah achas yelochem. Just like Avodah Zarah has Kores, Bemezid, and Chatas, Beshoigeg, so too anywhere else you search and Google around the Torah for Kores, the Shoigeg will automatically be Chatas, including Shabbos, including Shabbos. Very good. Let's not confuse, by the way, with Skila. Why? When we say Skila, that is when you mazid plus plus. You mazid with Eidim and Aso. How do you know get Skila? That's a very famous scene in the Bible. Yeah, also in Parshas Shlach. What does it say over there? The Mekoishesh. They didn't know what kind of Misa with Eidim and Asra to give a person Chal Shabbos. Tzlofchod, the father of the famous 5 girls, he was the one who was caught Mekoishesh. He was cutting the twigs or carrying the twigs, and he was Chayev. Skila. Oh, but that's a separate story. And now we're talking about Avodah Zarah mitzad Kores and Chatos. Now Rava is taking it one step further, and he's saying, Ma avodah zarah David ma'ase begufei, hachinami ad David ma'ase begufei. Aha. Says Rava, I disagree with you, Rami Bar Chama. Why? You're telling me that all these oinshim, kores, chatas, skila, that package deal of oinshim, of Shabbos, applies also to what? Applies to mechamer. I say no. Why? Because one of the sources, at least for chatos, chorus and chatos, is Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah you only chayv if you are over the Avodah Zarah actively with your body. There is a surah with megadef, if you curse, if you, that's a different story. But the normal way of being chayv of Avodah Zarah for the sake of Avodah Zarah, titled as Avodah Zarah, is only when you do an action. And if you bow down to some golden sculpture in India or something like that, if you do a ma'aseh, then you chayv the chiyuvim of chatas, chorus, etc. Oh, so too on Shabbos, you only chayv if you do the ma'aseh of your own body. But mechamer, you're not doing the ma'aseh. You're being smart. You're being like, remote control. You're being, Wi-Fi kind of guy. You are, not touching the animal. You're not touching the plow or the bag. You just direct it from the side, from behind. You're not doing it with your hands. And therefore, although you're a bad boy and you are doing an Isser D'Oraisa, you're not chayiv any of the chiyuvei oinshim. You're not chayiv any of the punishments of the D'Oraisa. Because the D'Oraisa only is mechayiv if you're acting physically. How do you know that? From Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah only chayiv if you have a physical act, not general beliefs. It's Asr. But the chiyuv is only if you're acting mamish b'yadayim. So to Shabbos is only if you're acting b'yadayim. That's one way for Rava to disprove Rami Bar Chama. But the Rava promised us 2 answers. Where's answer number 2? Where is the second refutation? The Oid, Tanan. Another Mishnah quoted from Sanhedrin, Samach Vav Amud Aleph, on top of the page. It says there, Mechalel Shabbos, I think Amud Aleph, maybe Amud Beis. Yeah, Amud Aleph. Yeah, Mechalel Shabbos, Bedover Shechayoven Shegigos Lechatas, Vazdon Eskila. The Mishnah says over there, if you Mechalel Shabbos, in such a way, in one of the Isur Shabbos that make you bring, that cause you to bring Korban Chatas Shogeg, was doing a skila. Did you hear that? If you break an Isur D'Oraisa of Shabbos, that happens to be, yes, skila and Chatos. Michlal, that sounds like, that is to say, to allude, the ikamidi, the enchayav and the shigagos chatas v'os don skila. Sounds like there's some kind of Issa D'Oraisa, some hidden Issa Doraisa that does not have Chatas and Skila. As far as we know, although we're going to find out different, but the basic knowledge idea is, yeah, the assumption is that all 39 melachas, they have Chatas and have Skila. So, which one is that odd Issa Doraisa that does not have the punishments? You guessed right. Umayniyu, lav de mechamer. Oh, must be mechamer. Must be mechamer is the one. Mechamer is the Issa Doraisa that does not, the Mishnah is hinting to me, does not carry with it the Isuri, the Oinshim, it's Osir, but there are no punishments. There are no Oinshim of Skila or Chiyut to bring a Korban. That refutation the Gemara rejects. Says the Gemara, no, not necessarily. We're not saying Rav is wrong, but Rav's proof is not necessarily right. Why? The Gemara says no. There could be other Isura D'Oraisa on Shabbos regarding Shabbos that do not carry with them those punishments. What are they? Tchumin v'aliba de Rabbi Akiva. Number one, we saw that many places it's in Soito, it's in Shabbos, yeah, Daf Samechtes, Daf Ein Gimel. The Isser of Tchumin, the Isser of walking with or without stuff on your body, even if you don't carry anything, the mere walking outside town, outside your Mokum Shvisa, 2,000 ames, beyond 2,000 ames, the general knowledge, if you ask a man in the street who knows what he's talking about, he will tell you it's Isser D'Rabbanan. And that is the mainstream opinion. Rabbi Kiva says no. Rabbi Kiva says the Tchumin, he's learning from Psukim, that the Isser Tchumin is an Isser de Oraisa. Oh, so that in that way, Rami Bar Chama has a way to fight back the Raya and say, no, you're telling me a Mishnah in Sanhedrin that's telling me that there's an Isser de Oraisa that doesn't have the punishments. It's not by default automatically mechamer. Maybe I am right, Rami Bar Chama, and mechamer has all the punishments. You're looking for that variable for the X. What kind of Isser Shabbos is there that doesn't have with it the Oinshim? Could be Tchumen. According to Rabbi Akiva, Tchumen is Osir, Deoraisa, but you're not good. But if you were over Tchumen, you broke the Isser of Tchumen, you're not going to be chayav any punishment. That's one. Or v'havora libed Rabbi Yosi. What's havora libed Rabbi Yosi? Taking us back to the Ayin Amud Aleph. There is a famous machlokes Rabbi Yosi and Rabbi Nosson. Why does it say in the Torah, Lo tevaru esh b'chol mishbasechem b'yom Shabbos? What's the news? Don't light fire in all your encampments, in all your dwelling places on Shabbos. Well, there are 39 melachas that are also on Shabbos, and most of them are not mentioned. We know them, Bel Peh, because they're all in the Mishkan. Why is Havara the odd one out to be mentioned Dafka in the Torah? There's a machlokes. Rabbi Nosson says one thing. Says Avor lechalak yotzas. Avor is coming to tell me that you have separate chatas for each av melocha. Rabbi Yossi says, surprisingly for many people, Rabbi Yossi says Havara, as opposed to what people think, is actually the, excuse the pun, the lightest Isser Shabbos. Havara is there to tell you Lo sevaru esh as a separate Isser which is different to all other Isser Shabbos, meaning all of Isur Shabbos we know from a Mufurish Pasuk in Kisisa. It says whoever breaks Shabbos is chayev, misa, skila, or kores if there are no edim. Then the Torah says Lo tevaru esh is an exception to the rule to tell you. Here comes the punchline that Havara is not chayev any of those onshim. If you lit fire on Shabbos, you're not chayev skila. According to Rashi, no skila, no kores, and subsequently no chatas. Just the punishment. Maybe you have Malchus, that's another question. There's no punishment. Ask any Chiloni, the Chiloni will tell you, yeah, all it says in the Torah is just not to light fire. Driving a car, unless you have a Tesla or a hybrid, is lighting fire, by the way, but that's besides the point. In any event, so could be, according to Rabbi Yossi, the Mishnah in Sanhedrin that says that variable, that kind of mysterious case of having an Isser Shabbos Deoraisa that does not have with it the Onshim, maybe that's Havoro, according to Rabbi Yossi. It's also the Raisa, but no Onshim. And therefore, in that respect, Rami Bar Chama was not completely rejected. I mean, the halacha l'maisa is not like Rami bar Chama. I can, you can rest assured, but we're still in the middle of the journey. Kuf nun daled amud aleph, Rav Zvid matni hochi. Rav Zvid says the follows. Yeah, Rav Zvid says as follows. Hachya Rami bar Chama. This is what Rami bar Chama says. Rav Zvid has a different version to what Rami bar Chama said. And what does he say? He's quoting Rami bar Chama in a different way. Mechamer achar behema b'Shabbos. A person walking behind his animal on Shabbos, making sure the animal is carrying a burden, or threshing, or plowing, or whatevering, yeah, and the person is walking behind it. So then, here he differentiates. B'shoigeg en chayv chatas. If it's b'shoigeg, is not chayv chatas. Why? Because we believe. How do you know a person's chayv chatas on Shabbos? From a vedazoro. And we said before, Rava said, Avodah Zarah, Kuf Nudalad Amud Aleph. Kuf Nudalad Amud Aleph, Bashra HaShalishit. Yeah, Kuf Nudalad Amud Aleph, we are learning about the Isser of mechamer. A person working with his animal together, Odom and Behema, working so beautifully together, but it's not beautiful in the eyes of Hashem because it's done on Saturday. So now, why not? Because just like Avodah Zarah, that who's the source for Shabbos Isurim is only done, is you only chayav chatos if you practically bow down to the getchke or served it food or something. Otherwise, no. So to Shabbos, as long as you're not physically actively involved in the malacha, not chayav chatos. B'mezid chayav skila. On the other hand, if you did it b'mezid, you're chayav skila. Why? Because he also believes Rami bar Chama's hekesh. Ata ubehemtecha. Ata ubehemtecha means what? Just like you are chayav skila if you do your own malacha b'mezid of plowing the field, choyresh. If you make sure animal plows the field, chayav skila. And skila we don't learn from Avodah Zarah. Don't ask me, but Avodah Zarah it has to be something practical, physical. Who cares? Skila is not learned from Avodah Zarah. Skila we know from the story of the Mekoshish. Very good. So basically, Rami bar Chama, according to this version, is halfway with us, halfway not. In one thing he says he is stark and says chayv skila, but b'shegeg you're not chayv chatos. Meisiv Rove, now Rove is challenging what this version of Rami bar Chama, and he says, this is a brayso. This is not the Mishnah Sanhedrin, it's a brayso. Mechalel es Shabbos b'dover shechayov en shgigos chatos, chayov en ozdon es skila, which means what? Quite clear. If you chayv chatos b'shegeg, the same version b'mezid with edim you chayv skila. Oh, what does it mean? End of brayso. What can we clearly be medayik and infer from that? Ha'en chayov en shgigos chatos, en chayav en ozdon es skila, right? You see that if b'shegeg there's no chatos, b'mezid there's no skila. Unlike what you said, you Rav Zvid wanted to make a very unique thing. You wanted to take it apart. You want to, divide and conquer. You want to say, b'mezid, yeah, it's skila, even though it's not a direct malacha. Shaygeg, leave him alone, he's not chayv anything. We don't see that, right? It looks from the brisa that they go hand in hand. Shaygeg bechatos is always mezid b'skila. Answers the Gemara, no, your diuk, the Gemara is going to reject the diuk of Rava from the Brisa. And the Gemara is going to say, Miktani ha'en chayovim? Not true. Your diuk is not written explicitly. It's not necessarily true. Hachikoma. Let's read the Brisa with a fresh look, different look to Rava. And that's what the Brisa says. Davar shechayov shegigos lechatos, chayov enozdon eskila. Meaning, if there's a chiyuv chatos b'shoigeg, then right, there's always skila. However, it does mean that the other way around is true. Yeah. In the other direction, you could have something that has no chatas and still there's skila. Every chatas has skila. Not every skila has chatas. Very simple. Yeah, it's not the same. You could have, yes, that option of having something that no chatas but yes skila, and voila, it's Mr. Mechamer. That is it. Now the Gemara is going to tell us a third opinion. Before we look at the third opinion, and in the middle of Kufin and Dalef, I want to show you a chart that I made. It's not a chart, it's like a sikum. Yeah, to just refresh our memories, also for the people who came now. What are the sources for Chilul Shabbos' oinshim, for the punishment of Chilul Shabbos? Mazid, what's Allah if you did b'mazid with Eidim and with Asra? Skila, right? Mazid without Eidim Asra? Chorus. What's the pasuk? It's a pasuk in Kisisa, beginning of Parshas Kisisa, toward the ends of Chumash Mois. Mechalalea Mois Yumas, that's b'mazid, Mois Yumas by people. V'niches on Nefesh Shahi, look up Rashi over there, in the pasuk, Perek Lamadalef, pasuk Yudaled, Mechalalea Mot Yumat v'nicheta Nefesh Shahi. Two things. Mot Yumat, when it's be'edim v'asra, nichas hanefesh mezid without edim v'asra. Today, there's no bezdin today, right? The person goes smokes a cigarette in Pakay alone on Friday night, unfortunately, off the derech people. What happens then? Chayav kores. Chayav kores. Why is it chayav kores? There's no bezdin, but what is there? Chayav kores. Now, how do you know that the death is through skila? We didn't know that until much later in Parshas, the end of Parashat Bashalach, the story of the Mekoshe shall go ba'avonim. They didn't know how to kill the person who was Mechal Shabbos, the first Mechal Shabbos in history, second Shabbos already was Chilul Shabbos, and the Torah says, do skila. That's the whole story, Eidim Vasra, Mezid, one or the other. How do you know Shogig is Chayv Chatos? Oh, that we learn from Avodah Zorah. In Avodah Zorah, we learn to rule. Just like in Avodah Zorah, at the end of Parshas Shlach, it says what? Not bishalach, but shlach, yeah? No, actually, I'm making a mistake. No, oh, you made a mistake. They're both shlach. No. I meant shlach, not bishalach. I always make this mistake. Sorry. I have to correct my own list. In other words, Mekosh is not in, it's in Parshas Shlach Lecho Meraglim, Shlach Lecho, sorry. Both in the same Parsha, Parsha Shlach. Apologies. So in Bamid, by the end of Parsha Shlach, it says, Im nefesh achas techta b'shgogo, if one Chalila worships Avodah Zorah, what does he have to bring? B'shgogo a korban, eiz, and b'mezid it's a chiyuv koris. And then it says Torah achas yelochem. What's Torah achat yelochem? Torah achas yelochem means what? Kol a Torah is like Avodah Zorah, which means whenever you have a chiyuv koris b'mezid, automatically the shogeg is chatos. Okay. That's the general knowledge as we're about to finish the Masechta and preparing a very grand siyum, I hope. Then we better go back to basics. Now, let's see. Who says lo chayav chatat? We don't know. We're debating it right now. We're in the middle of the sugya. Ask Rami Bar Chama, he will tell you yes. He doesn't mention chatas. He mentions skila and chatas, and he says yes. He doesn't mention chorus. I meant according to Rami Bar Chama, you chayav chatas. You're asking according to what we just learned now? Oh, how? How do you know to have chatos? Because those who argue around B'Machom, I'm answering you, my dear neighbor, because we compare it to Avodah Zorah. How do you know to have chatos from Avodah Zorah? Avodah Zorah only chayiv if you yourself did Avodah Zorah b'yadayim, physically, right? And mechamer, he's not doing anything physically. He's a smart guy. He's like hands off. He's not touching anything. He's just telling the animal, hey, Bessie, move here, move there, do this, do that. And the animal does the Chilul Shabbos for him, the remote control. Yeah? So just like Avodah Zarah, you're not chayav chatos unless you did it b'yadayim. So to Shabbos, you're not chayav chatos unless you did it b'yadayim. Okay? That's what the mainstream opinion holds. And now we're going to see the third opinion. Rove. We're going to skip a good few lines over here with the advice of the Bach and some Rishonim. Rove, Achuad Rav Mari Bar Rochel. Rove was the brother of Rav Mari Bar Rochel. Now the Gemara goes into a whole question if he was the father of the brother, and I'm not reading those lines because the Bach says no reason to read them, and he says the following. Now skip all the way down to Omer Rabbi Yochanan. You see in about 5 lines we have the word Rabbi Yochanan. So Rove, the brother of Rav Mari Bar Rochel, quotes Rabbi Yochanan saying, "A mechamer, lifto." He's the one, Rabbi Yochanan, who patters, he exempts you from any punishment if you do mechamer on Shabbos. Potur miklum, completely potur. B'shogeg lo mechayev chatos. If you were mechamer on Shabbos mistakenly, not knowing it's Shabbos or not knowing it's Osir, you don't have to bring korban chatos. Why? Since kol Torah kula, meaning all isurei kores, are compared to avodah zarah, and avodah zarah you're not chayv anything if you did not practically, do something physical to the avodah zarah. So you're not chayev if you do it bechatas. So far, nothing. Wait, let's see nice and slow. B'mezid, namin lo mechayev. B'mezid, let's say the person Chalila was mechamer b'mezid. He knows it's also to do some work on Shabbos, and he's doing borer with his monkey. On Shabbos, the monkey is doing borer, intelligent chimpanzee, and the person is happy and encouraging him. No, he's not chayev anything. Why? Why not? Ditnan, a mechalel Shabbos. The same Mishnah in Sanhedrin Samech Vav that we saw before. Right? It says if a Mechalel Shabbos was something that you have Shachatos Donis Kila, very good. In other words, they go hand in hand. Whatever you have Chatos, you have Skila. If there's no Chatos, no Skila. And since here there's no Chatos, we've established that there's no Chatos. By the way, I don't think that's the Mishnah in Sanhedrin. I actually think that this is a brisa. It says some. I don't know. No, the diet it's the same brisa we saw before. Actually, it's very simple what it does. In other words, two stages. First of all, he broke away. He erased the idea of chatas. Right? No chatas. Why? Chatas is learned from Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah means when you're practically doing it yourself. Right? So to Shabbos, you only chayav and you do it yourself, not by proxy, not with your animal doing it. Now continue to the next formula. Whoever is doing shigig chatas is doing with biskila. Mashma no chatas, no skila. So the chain broke in one place and it's completely broken now. No chatas, no skila, nothing. Akiva asking, what is the chayev? Who says it's chayev? You're just trying to punish people? No. Let people live. However, the Gemara is bothered by your question, and the Gemara is saying, belav nami lo mechayev. He's not even chayiv with a lav. What does it mean he's not chayiv in a lav? We just established, of course there's a lav. There's a lav d'oraisa that tells you not to work with your animal. Ato b'mtecha, lo tasi kol malocha, atu b'nicha b'techa, avdecha v'mascha b'mtecha, v'chulei. So what do you mean b'lav? When we say chayiv b'lav, it means chayiv 39 lashes. Because the default punishment, unless known otherwise, the default punishment for Iso Doraisa is what? Malchus. The Gemara is basically telling us even Malchus is not chayiv, right? That's a chiddush. Because normally a lav Doraisa, let's say there's no specific punishment, the default, the breirat mechdal, is what? Malchus. Okay. So now why do you chayiv Malchus? Why not? Says the Gemara, the havi lav shenisan lazos misas bezdin. Which means it's one of the exceptions to the rule. That rule of any lav is what? Is automatically chai malchus. There's a few exceptions. Remember some exceptions? For example, lav shen b'maisa, right? Lav shen b'maisa is not like it, right? Person is talking all kinds of things. Usually, yeah. Lav shen b'maisa, you're not chai malchus. Usually, what? Right. Okay. Oh, because there's another punishment. Talking. Or lavanita classe. Yeah, let's a lavanita classe. There is a lavanita classe. Shalachta shlachatem. You're supposed to, not take the eggs when the mother bird is there, but you are supposed to send it away. There's like a remedy. Don't leave noisa. Don't leave a leftover kodshim, but rather, what should you do? Burn them if you did leave them. Yeah. That's lav shenita klase. Here comes a third exception, lav shenisan lazos misas bezin, which means if the Torah on that very same lav gave you the punishment of death, of misas bezin, of execution, then even for whichever reason you can't give him the misas bezdin, we don't say there's plan A, misas bezdin, and plan B. The second opportunity is what is to give him malchus. No, if it's meant to be Misas Bezdin, then it will be either Misas Bezdin or nothing. Why is Mrs. Bezdin here? I thought we don't believe in Mrs. Bezdin but mechamer. Yes, says Rashi. But that general love, the Orais, of course, is Mrs. Bezdin. The same love, that's Mamish Aser Sadibras. When it says lo tase kol malocha atu b'incha b'decha avducha v'moscha v'btecha b'shorecha b'mtecha, you doing the regular mates malachas, a person smoking, driving, boirer, mechatech, of course it's chayiv misa, and it's lumped together with mechamer. So since mechamer is mentioned with that umbrella, that general issa, which is chayiv misa, so be'etzim it's called a punishment of chiyuv misa, an issa with chiyuv misa. I mechamer is the exception because you don't give a misa because we learned it from somewhere else, right? From the Avodah Zorah and the other hekesh, yeah. Oh, but lemaisa because it's generally belonging to lab, which is meant to go all the way stark, strong to misas based in, even though this prat of mechamer is not misas based in, we don't say well, preferably misas based in. Plan B, second grade would be what? Malchus. No, no Malchus. Malchus is only for Onshim that have, for Averos that have no Oynish written. B'chlal. There's no Oynish written. Then you give Malchus. Yeah, but here when there is an Oynish written, generally about Shabbos, then he does get Mrs. Beit. He doesn't get Malchus. Now, Vafilu, that's according to Man Domer that says, Mechlokis, Makis of Gimel with base. Mechlokis, I think, Rabbi Kivan or Rabbi Shmuel, if I remember correctly. Now it's a machlokes. Va'afilu leman de omar loikin. Apparently there is a man de omar there, but the Tanoim that says loikin. He's chaylik, and he says lav ha nisas lemisas beis nitan lemisas beisdin. If you can't give a misas beisdin, you do give him malchus. So the choyer here, I don't care. It's a chiyuv misa. You're still supposed to give malchus. Says the Gemara, no. Even according to him, here specifically, there's a reason not to give Mrs. Beis, not to give Malchus. Why? Especially limud. Let's see. What's a limud? Lichtav Rachmana. The Torah should have written Loitase kol malocha ubemtecha. Listen to the translation of the pasuk. Don't do any malocha and your animal. That's enough. Ato lamali. The Torah seems to say something redundant, something superfluous. The Torah says, don't do any melacha, you and your animal. Obviously, when the Torah says, don't do any melacha, it's talking to you and not your animal. The Torah is not given to animals, it's given to human beings, to Yidden. So why are you telling me, hey, you, Mr. Jew, I mean you, don't do any melacha, you and your animal. The second time it says you is redundant. Lamali. Why does it say you and your animal? Oh, you know why? It's coming to tell me, who knew the mechayev, the hemtala mechayev. It's coming to exclude and to separate, to basically, divert and separate and distinguish between you and your animal. You and your animal are two different levels. You are going to get what? You're going to get misa, and if there's no misa, you are chayav malchus, because you're a human being, and according to that man, the Omar, if there's no misa, there's malchus. I'll give you a good example. Let's say they were master for malchus. Let's say the Eidim, I don't know if they were Amaratzim or they had Rahmanasanim, I don't remember the case, The Eidim told him, listen, are you going to smoke this cigarette? You see him pulling out the cigarette. He didn't yet light it with a lighter. It's only Muktzah the Rabbanon. Hey, Mr. So-and-so, you realize you're going to get, it's also B'Shabbos. I don't care. You realize that if you do that, you can get Malchus. They didn't tell him you're going to get Skila. They warned him for Malchus. Then, according to that Mount Domer, it's going to get Malchus. You go according to the Asra. So now, that's only true for human being. An animal will, if you work with the animal, you will not even get Malchus. Why? Ata ubehemtecha. The Torah repeats the Ata to distinguish and tell me, no, they're two separate stories. Ata, you would get either Misa or Malchus. The animal is so different to you, mentioned again, to tell you, if you work with the animal, you, as working from afar with the animal, mechamer, you will not get neither Misa nor Malchus. That's a Chiddush. So at the end of the day, Rabbeinu, if you do mechamer, again, I'm not a shir halacha over here, I don't know halacha l'maisa, and anyhow, we don't know based in today, but the halacha I do know, generally speaking, is like Rabbi Yochanan, and the mechamer is an issa d'oraisa, and you don't get neither, nothing.
So what do you get?
I don't know, maybe it says Beis Din in each. Beis Din can always, Beis Din, even in the times of the Rishonim or later, when there was a real Koch Beis Din could hit people or Cherem. They could do all kinds of things to people to stop them from doing for time punish them. But me'ikar din Torah, Medina de Gemara, there's no punishment on mechamer, or so it seems. Lefi the maskana. Okay, shkoyach raboisai chashuvim. That's for what's tomorrow? Tuesday. See you all tomorrow, Mirza Hashem. Tuesday. Thank you to anybody that came here and to our friends all over the world who watch us in Torah anytime. Thank you for the Torah anytime team. Why do you think there was no shir yesterday? There's shir every day. Yeah, I don't go to Chasanas when I have shir. You know that.